was early June 2017, and I was on a road trip to West Virginia with my 9-year-old son, Julian. We were going to visit family, but what should have been a pleasant 6-hour drive was anything but. My car didn't have working air conditioning, and it was a brutally hot day. The tension in the car was thick, a result of the heat and a personal disagreement that had soured our moods. By the 6th hour, the sun had set and we were still on the road. It was around 9 p.m., and we were on the interstate when Julian started complaining he needed to use the bathroom. His constant whining only amplified the stress that was already in the car, and we ended up having a small argument about personal issues. The back and forth eventually died down, and I figured the rest of the ride would be a silent, uncomfortable one. I was getting ready to resign myself to the quiet ride when I saw a blue rest area sign zoom past us on the interstate. Without a second thought, I veered off the exit. The rest area was small and isolated, with a little building that had 2 bathrooms, a couple of vending machines, and a few benches. There were no other cars parked nearby, save for a big white pickup truck. As I pulled up next to the building, Julian bolted out of the car in a hurry and ran to the bathroom. I left the car on, knowing he'd be back in a minute. We hadn't spoken since our argument, and I didn't know what to say to him anyway. A minute later, the back door of my car opened and then shut. I wanted to say something to Julian, but I was still flustered from our argument. My plan to stay quiet for the rest of the drive was still very much in effect. I waited for him to get settled, then pulled out of the rest area. As I was leaving, I noticed the white pickup truck was leaving too. In fact, he was right behind me. I veered back onto the interstate and into the left lane, and the pickup truck did the same. I sped up a little, and so did he. He started flashing his lights, so I moved to the right lane, thinking he was just an aggressive driver. But as soon as I switched lanes, he did too, still flashing his lights. I slowed down and he sped up, still in the middle lane. When he caught up to me, he slowed down and lowered his window. My heart was pounding now. I did the same. He started yelling something at me, pointing to my car. At first glance, he looked like a creepy, sketchy guy. I couldn't hear a word he was saying, so he gestured for me to pull over to the side. I told Julian to stay calm in my head, even though I had no idea what to do. I was ready to floor it if this guy tried anything funny. The pickup truck pulled up behind me on the grass, and the guy came out of his truck, running toward my car. I put the car in drive, ready to get out of there, but he screamed, "Wait!" He got to my window, out of breath, and said, "That's not your kid." He pointed to my back seat as he said this. My mind went blank. "What?" I asked, confused. "That's not your kid that got in your car?" He yelled back. Suddenly, the back right side door opened, and I turned to see someone getting out of my car. It wasn't my son, Julian. It was a person, a fully grown man, who had somehow gotten into my car. I got out of the car, screaming at the man as he disappeared into the woods. I turned back to the driver of the pickup truck. He was a lifesaver. I thanked him as a wave of panic washed over me, a nauseating feeling of terror for Julian. I got back in my car, crossed the grass median, and drove back to the rest area, with the man in the pickup truck following me. We got back to the rest area in about 30 seconds. Julian was waiting outside the bathroom, completely confused. I explained everything to him out of breath, and the pickup driver corroborated my story. I thanked the guy one more time before he drove away. The entire incident was so disturbing that it completely broke the ice between Julian and me. We were on good terms again and talked the entire rest of the way home. I never got to see what the person who got into my car looked like, and honestly, I think I'm okay with that. My girlfriend, Lena, and I recently took a road trip to California. The weather was completely normal. We left early in the morning and got to the hotel by nightfall. The drive was about 10 hours each way, not including stops for food. On our way back home, however, we left midday, and a majority of our ride was in the dark. We made 2 stops for food. The first was after about 3 hours of driving, and the second was much later, deeper into the night. We got off the freeway around 12:30 a.m. and went to the nearest fast food restaurant for some burgers. We got right back on the freeway after that. I ate while I drove, which Lena wasn't too fond of, but I just wanted to get home sooner rather than later. Shortly after getting back on the freeway, it started to rain. Lena forced me to pull over, not wanting me to eat and drive in the poor conditions. As I pulled over to the side, it started to absolutely downpour. I finished my food, and then we heard a loud bang at my window. At first, I talked it up to the sounds of the storm, But when I looked to my left out the window, I saw a figure blocking 90% of the window. My girlfriend shrieked, and I nearly had a heart attack. I didn't want to roll down the window, given how hard it was pouring, but over the sound of the torrential rain pounding on the car, I couldn't hear what the person was saying. I cracked the door and yelled out to the person, who turned out to be a woman. She was soaked and looked disheveled and scared. She asked for a ride. What was I supposed to do? Tell her no in these conditions? I told her to get in the back seat. Lena gave me a look. I don't know what kind of look it was exactly, but it was a look that said, "Why in the hell did you let her in?" I asked the woman where she was heading, but she didn't answer. I looked at Lena, who was giving me a look again. I ignored her and turned around to look at the woman in the back seat, assuming she didn't hear me. But as creepy as it was, she was looking right at me with a cold, unfriendly face. I would say it was a neutral, blank face, but something about it was just off-putting. I repeated my question, and she just shrugged her shoulders and left it at that. I looked at Lena again, who was once again looking at me. I said out loud that I'd be dropping the woman off at the next town we crossed. I guess I was announcing that to both Lena and the woman. As we got back onto the barren highway, there was a sudden, ear-piercing screaming sound that came from right behind me. The woman sitting behind me suddenly wrapped her arms around my throat. I slammed on the brakes as I was struggling to breathe. We almost slid into the divider. Lena started slashing at the woman's face with her long nails. The screaming turned from a deranged, angry kind of screaming to screams of pure pain and agony. I got out of the car, and the woman had her hands pressed against her face, begging. I opened the back door, grabbed the woman with both hands, and literally threw her out of the car into the rain. She started begging, "Please, please," over and over as I looked down at her. She cried as she kept saying the word. I ignored her, got back into my car, and locked it. As I put the car in drive, there were loud bangs on the window as the woman started screaming again. Her screams once again sounded like the screams of a deranged mental asylum patient. I drove away casually. She was no longer a real threat, or at least not that I knew of. Lena quickly got on the phone with the police and warned them of a suspicious, unstable woman lurking around the highway. We didn't stop again. We went straight home from there, a bit shaken up, obviously, but I didn't want to think about that incident for any longer than I had to. It was 2010, and I was driving my Ford F-150 from my home in Pennsylvania to Georgia. I was going to visit family in the countryside and was planning on doing the entire 14-hour drive in one day. I got on the road at 10 a.m. I stopped once for lunch at some deli, and then 4 hours later, I stopped at a rest area to eat the turkey sandwiches I had packed in the cooler. After that, I didn't intend on making any other stops besides for gas. I had just filled up the tank one more time at about 11:30 p.m., and my ETA was about 12:30 a.m. I was admittedly getting very tired now, and I regretted not getting coffee at the gas station. The route my GPS was taking me down seemed a little odd. I wasn't on the highway anymore. It was just taking me down some countryside roads. My truck is high up, so I had a good view of everything, and I also had a light bar installed, which really helped light up the pitch black roads. I was so tired, and I knew I shouldn't have been driving anymore, but I was so close to my cousin's house that I had to keep going. I came to a stop sign and made a left turn off some quiet road onto an even quieter one. The speed limit on this road was 45, which was good. This road was empty of any kind of buildings or houses. It was just woodland on either side. I was going about 55 to 60 miles per hour, blazing down this road, since it really seemed like no other cars would be on this type of road at this hour. Then suddenly, I saw about 4 shiny objects coming up fast in the road ahead of me. I slammed on the brakes, and as I got closer, I figured out what they were. They were traffic drums, like those big cylindrical traffic cones. My truck managed to come to a halt just before I rammed into the drums. I got out of my truck with my baseball bat, confused as hell, and went over to the traffic drums. I realized there was something else behind them, a spike trap, like the kind the police use. I didn't know what to think. Was there some kind of police activity going on, or did somebody set this up as a trap? I cautiously looked all around me as I inched back to my truck. Then I heard someone scream, "Help!" It came from the woods on the left side of the road. There was no way I was about to go into those woods. The most I was willing to do was call out, "What's wrong?" There was no answer. I walked to the edge of the road and looked into the forest. The only reason I could see anything was because of the lights from my truck. In the corner of my eye, I spotted him. Without looking directly at him, I saw someone crouched down behind a couple of bushes. I didn't run, I just casually walked back to my car. When I got in and shut the door, I looked to my left to see two silhouettes by the edge of the woods on the side of the road, walking toward my truck. I drove the truck to the right side of the road, onto the dirt, and past the spiked trap. I don't think they anticipated me actually going around. When I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw at least 3 silhouettes standing by the traffic drums, lit up only briefly by the taillights of my truck. A few seconds later, they were gone from my vision and out of my life forever. This was not something I would have ever expected to happen to me. I'm just glad I made it out alive.